DEI, or Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, has become the boogeyman of the video game industry. A lot of people have been having discussions on whether or not it actually improves the quality of video games or whether it actually takes away. So today I kind of wanted to get into that discussion and discuss whether it's actually a good thing for our industry or if it's actually taking away from the quality of the games that we expect. My name is Donovan. I'm the owner of Blinded Light '09, also the sole employee. And this is my fireside chat where I discuss video game discourse next to a fire. I don't think you can actually see it this time, but it's there. It's turned on. And with me, I have a guest. I have, actually, what do you want to go by?
Hello, everybody. My name is Xander, also known as Open Insanity 94. Pleasure to be here with you.
Xander, you would say that you aren't really a political person, right?
I wouldn't call myself a political person. I have dabbled in both sides of the equation on it, but I'd like to think I keep relatively level head on both sides of the equation.
Right, yeah. And this topic, DEI, is inherently political, but we are going to try to keep this conversation strictly to video games. We're not going to try to go outside that realm. And the reason why I picked you for this topic is because I feel like you have the representation of like a majority of the video game audience. So I figured that you would be a good person to listen to hear from when it comes to DEI. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I'm just kind of a regular gamer who dabbles in all forms of gaming. So I can't see why you wouldn't want to pick somebody who really doesn't have any ties or has any reason to void their opinion based on how they've been told or how they feel.
Yeah. So I guess my first question to you is, before I approached you about doing this with me, did you know anything about DEI or have you even heard of it?
Well, I have heard of DEI before this, and what I have heard is usually either second or third hand, and usually it is in the negative connotation, a lot of misinformation being thrown around in regards to actually what it is, what it stands for, and how it can either help or hinder the gaming industry.
Okay, so go ahead and give me what your idea of what DEI was before you did your research, and then we can talk about what you know about it now after your research.
Given what I have been described, I will describe it as, DEI is very bad for gaming industry. They want to put the gays in the game and make everything unplayable. It's just wanting to make everything into one big sloppy fest for one very small group of minority. That's basically how it was explained to me before I even remotely touched the research.
Okay, so you would say that like after your research, your idea of it has improved?
I would definitely say I am much more well-informed in regard.
Okay, that's good. So, I guess now we should probably explain what it is. It's essentially the idea of trying to get more representation of a broader audience inside of these video games. It mostly manifests in like a wide variety of characters. Like someone could be a black character, someone could be an Asian character. It also extends to gay and transsexual characters, things like that. That's at least the diversity section of DEI, equity. I actually have a thing pulled up for equity because that one's a little more confusing to understand. Equity is about fairness, ensuring that all players and creators have access to opportunities and resources, regardless of their starting point. In games, that could be things like balance mechanics or accessibility features. I have seen an explosion of accessibility features lately, and I think that's a great thing, personally.
I would have to agree with you on that.
And then inclusion is a welcoming environment, both in the game itself and in the industry. So, yeah, DEI can also manifest itself within like game development, not just the games themselves. So that is essentially what DEI is, at least at its core, a very layman's way of explaining it, I believe. And of course, with everything that's even slightly political, there is a large discussion being had over it. Whether what's the way to say this? there have been a lot of people that have been speaking out against it, trying to get people to see that it's a bad thing and that it shouldn't be in video games. It shouldn't be anywhere close to video games.
Well, much like any topic, there are nuances to the conversation to be had. As again, I mentioned before, there is a little bit of misinformation or previously conceived notions about it that are technically true, but maybe not in spiritually true. For example, a lot of people will sit there and view it as merely as, oh, the whole point of it is just to make it to where you can have more, example, gays and characters when the argument would be that there wouldn't be any reason to have that in the first place. That may not entirely be true, given the fact that there have definitely been situations where DEI has actually helped more in regards to smaller deals, such as accessibility features or ensuring that everybody has the ability to play the product without having to have a lot of physical limitations or even mental limitations behind it. For example, Ubisoft is definitely one of the pioneers, I would say, in regards to this, saying a lot of their accessibility features allow you to fine tweak it to whatever issues you may be having with the title itself. For this example, color blindness, or maybe text is being a little bit too small and difficulty to read. Things like that allow it to be a little bit more on DEI's mindset, more than just what a lot of people say they have, which is arguably the more extreme variants of it.
Yeah, and when you say extreme variants, you're talking about the people that are discussing like the race of characters or the sexual preferences of characters, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that is like the bulk of the discussion when it comes to DEI that I've seen. For example, popular streamer Asmongold, I have seen him say that when it comes to playing video games, he would rather play a white male because that is who he is. That is what represents him, and he believes, and I believe he believes this incorrectly. He believes that that is the bulk of the video game audience, and that video games should be tailored towards that audience.
I disagree with this mindset, mostly because the fact that a lot of times when you say, oh, generic white guy, it actually can take a lot of people out of it, because at that point you're not creating anything that somebody can really attach themselves to. It's basically just another cookie cutter version of that. And just because, for example, he is a white person wanting to play as a white person, that's his preference, sure, but that doesn't mean that he should be the one saying that should be the bulk of the audience, and therefore that's what everybody should be playing.
I think there is a thing to be said though that maybe not white, but the male audience used to be mostly the representation of the video game audience. Throughout the years, that has grown. Like the female audience has grown, and you can see that in like the types of games that are being made. And then of course, women also enjoy the same games that men enjoy. It's not just exclusive to men. But that audience has grown, and you can see that, like I said, in the video games that are being made, but also in Twitch streamers. There's a lot of female Twitch streamers that only play video games. They don't do anything else.
Right. And once upon a time, that may have been true about only guys being the ones playing it, but that's also due to the fact that back in the day, gaming was marketed as a toy for boys, and that's where it kind of got its start. So I can see why some people still kind of hold on to that mindset, especially the older generations. But as you said before, the gaming world is exploded with brand new types of diversity, people playing it. We have male and female. We have a bunch of different ethnicities playing it. It doesn't have to be limited to one mindset.
So there's a someone in one of my classes. He is a black person that grew up in a black neighborhood, and he described himself as like someone who was very nerdy, but also kind of had to be closeted about it because the neighborhood that he grew up in like basically bullied nerds. He basically had to have this front of him being this hard person that doesn't take any shit. But from what I've seen is that he's now allowed to be more open about his nerdiness. And I've seen a lot of people be more open about their nerdiness. Even like when we were kids, nerds used to get picked on, but now people get picked on for not playing video games. It's kind of crazy how that works, huh?
Yeah, but I also feel like that's also stemmed from the fact that from an earlier generation, you were kind of like you were kind of told to bully those kind of people, like media outlets and whatnot, movies, TV shows, and stuff like that always showed the nerve getting bullied. Therefore,
Yeah.
that's what you should be doing. So, I mean, I'm glad that mindset has definitely been something that people have grown out of. But there could be an argument to stand that is still something there, especially when it comes to gamers, because of the arguments still floating around to this day about how video games could be detrimental to you or to others around you. There's still people saying that it'll make you homicidal and go out there and pick up a firearm and shoot up your neighborhood. But I feel like that definitely is dying out with the wider expansion of the quote unquote gamer being a little bit more in the front lines, a little bit more centered, especially since now we have things like competition sports that people participate in and actually can win a lot of money doing it, similar to like something like the NBA, the NFL. It's definitely not something that definitely needs to be hidden away anymore, and is a little bit more opened and accepted in mainstream media, at least from what I've seen.
Yeah, exactly. And because the audience has been growing, because the audience is becoming more diverse, that makes the idea of being more diverse with your characters better. Like, for example, I'm Native American, and a lot of the times when I played video games growing up, I'm playing a white character, right? Which I've never really thought too much about personally. But then Infamous Second Son comes out, and that character is Native American, and I found myself like not. I love the idea of being able to play Native American in a video game, and the fact that this game itself is also really really good, just is a bonus to that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it was a character you were able to latch onto because you felt a connection with that character. And that is ultimately what I feel a lot of people want to do, is feel a connection towards a character or something that they feel like in their games that make them want to play it and enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's because of that I think DEI can be important when it comes to the video game industry, or things in general. But one argument that I do see being against DEI, and I don't think this is a problem with DEI itself, but something that is very obvious is that the games that tend to focus on DEI, that tend to make that its primary focus when making games, tend to not be so good. Like, look at Concord, for example. That game was a disaster, and it had DEI at the forefront of its mission statement, basically.
Okay, so at the end of the day, what are we doing with a video game? We're looking to be entertained, correct? We are looking to, for a lot of people, shut off the world's problems, sit down and enjoy some time where we can just kind of either decompress or find a story we enjoy, or just kind of, have like an hour or two of just pure enjoyment without any kind of issues. I feel like one of the reasons Concord failed was because that not only did they wanted to have the inclusivity in it, but that was the forefront of the mind. It was throwing a lot of what the world is fighting around right now into the forefront. It forgot that it needed to be a fun game first before being what a lot of people were calling virtue signaling, just to gain a wider audience of people who may not even actually play video games in the first place. Whether they do or don't, that's not for me to say. However, it comes across as disingenuous when the DEI was like, okay, we're going to make it to where every character is either a different ethnicity or different sexuality or stuff like that. And because of that, the gameplay front took a significant hit. More resources went into the ideology as opposed to the actual game mechanics, making the very thing that we're trying to play fun. And because of that, that is one of the reasons why, I would argue one of the major reasons why that game specifically failed the way it did, because it came across as nothing more than an Overwatch clone with much more virtual signaling as I've heard it described.
Which is funny because, like, that's where Overwatch succeeded, where Concord failed, is that Overwatch was first and foremost a fun game. But then it also became a game with a diverse cast, where you have representations of different ethnicities and different representation of different sexualities. Concord went into game development with trying to do that first and then do gameplay second, from what I've seen. And yeah, you see how that turned out.
Right, right. And that's something that I feel like Overwatch did excellent on, was the fact that it wasn't sitting there throwing diversity or inclusivity up front, but rather give us a fun game and then a wide net for people to have characters that they can latch onto for various reasons, one or another. I like
Yeah.
it whenever I discover something about the game as I'm playing it, and rather than having it to me as what feels like a checklist of things that people are trying to achieve with inclusivity and all that from the forefront of the game, as opposed to discovering it natively while I'm playing the game.
Yeah, and I guess that's a good question to ask, is that, like, at what point does it go from being good representation to just being a checklist?
I would argue that when you are making the game, you make for example, when you want to create a character who is obviously of different ethnicity or something like that, you don't create a character whose primary thing is that ethnicity, but rather a character that exists in that, and then you make it as a part of it rather than the forefront of it. One of
Can
my
you give
greatest
me?
examples.
Oh, I was just about to ask for example. That's perfect.
What my favorite examples is, and actually this is from a company that people have been, both loving and hating for years because of this kind of subject matter, is BioWare. There is a character in specifically Mass Effect 3 who I always use as a go-to example for how you write somebody of a different sexuality correctly. It is a character, Cortez. He was a pilot for the Normandy in the games. He was a character who was well written, well handled, and what I liked about it was the fact that I didn't know he was actually in a homosexual relationship and actually married until after I had already talked to this character, learned a little bit about him, and just kind of was interested in how it was done, because he was a character who existed and the sexuality was a part of it, not the forefront of it.
Yeah, makes it feel more realistic in a way.
Exactly. I feel like if you place it in front of them, it's like, oh, I'm a gay black guy, then that to me hurts the character, because at that point that comes across as more of like, oh, look at me. I am this thing that people have been wanting in games, rather than actually being a part of, whatever it is that it is actually a part of. It comes across as pandering almost.
And actually, I think BioWare is a great case study when it comes to this conversation. And these examples I'm about to bring up, I'm stealing directly from an Ackman video, because he talks, like, he had a whole video about politics in video games,
Right.
and he brings up the Dragon Age franchise, actually, and in the most recent Dragon Age game, Dragon Age Veilguard, there is a trans character who is being used as to why why Veilguard is bad. And personally, I think Veilguard's a good game. I think it's fun. I think the writing is bad, or at least the dialogue is bad. And that's a thing I'm going to talk about later, is writing in modern games. But so when it comes to this trans character, there's a scene where someone misgenders them by accident, and they take it upon themselves to punish themselves for misgendering this character, and that can kind of be seen as what's the word? Like, you're talking down on the viewer in a way. I think that's what a lot of people have been saying about that scene, and I kind of get that. Yeah, I kind of get that.
I can definitely understand why, because at that point, that almost is like, people make mistakes all the time, even in real life. But instead of getting up in arms and having a whole thing about it, 9 times out of 10, we just either quickly correct them or we just ignore it and move on. Okay, when you have a situation where your character is actively being talked down to, comes across as belittling, making you feel as if you're, infinitesimal compared to the person that you are talking to. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people are rubbed wrong about that. And I think this has a lot to do with the fact that we still don't know how to properly write characters like this that comes across genuine, but also doesn't make it sound like as if you're pandering or intentionally trying to piss off your demographic.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think there have been successful trans characters in games, and this just wasn't one of them.
Given the fact that Dragon Age Veilguard has had some serious problems behind the scenes, way before even this character was incepted, I'm willing to say that Dragon Age, because I've loved the Dragon Age franchises. Now, Veilguard doesn't appeal to me because of its art direction, because of its writing, as you've mentioned before, and several of the gameplay mechanics I wasn't too big of a fan of, but that's personal preference on my own. Okay, that's why I didn't care for it. But the DEI issues that people have with the games were definitely not of my own issues. So I really can't say the Dragon Age was bad because of that specific issue. But given that what I know that the company stands for, what they've done, and what they've gone through to even get this out the door, I would argue that this was bad for. I would say that well, not necessarily bad because there are people out there who have gotten their enjoyment out of it. But I would say it's definitely not my cup of tea as a casual gamer.
And honestly, like this is I'm referencing back to this Ackman video. I honestly highly recommend watching it. It's really good. But he talks about how these characters, this group of adventurers, they all just kind of get along for whatever reason. They don't have any conflict amongst each other. And that can be seen as like, I think it's not good writing because there's going to be conflict within a group. And he even brings up the very first Dragon Age as an example, where you have this character who's from a society where men do everything and women just kind of stay home and do, household chores and shit like that. But he's being forced to be part of this group where there are women adventurers. And throughout the game, he's learning that women is more than what he believed them to be.
Right.
And when it comes to Dragon Age Veilguard, that doesn't exist. Even whenever you have like this character, this trans character that can be put into this kind of conflict where you could have someone who isn't really okay with like transsexuality, but because they're being exposed to this person, because they're learning or they're meeting this person and getting to know them, they finally start seeing them as just, oh, this is just a regular person, not just this weird being that I had in my head. Another example of that, another BioWare game, believe it or not, Ashley Johnson from Mass Effect.
Ashley Johnson from Mass Effect is one of my favorite characters because of her evolution throughout the series, rather than just a stagnant character that everybody has kind of had this preconceived notion about her. What I love about her is the fact that she, for all intents and purposes, is kind of the stereotype for people who believe that the humans are the top of the totem pole and all races are technically beneath her. She doesn't see the value in them. But as she goes through and meets these other characters, meets these other people, learns different ways of life, she learns to open up about it and even discover that, yes, everybody is equal in their own right. To me, that is actually one of my favorite representations of a racist growing past that and actually learning to not only accept but cherish people for their differences rather than alienate them because of them.
Yeah, what makes her so good is because she has what she believes to be a great reason to be essentially a racist, right? She, like her family, if I remember correctly, her family was attacked by alien races, and she just grown to resent them because of that. She lost a lot due to essentially an alien invasion, and that can be, and from what I've met or what I have seen with real life races is that they have these preconceived notions against these other races because they met someone who did something bad to them that's of another race.
Mm-hmm.
But because of her journey, she learns that to be more accepting, to be a better person, and I think it's a shame that a lot of people never saw that because they chose to save Caden instead.
Yeah, I
because
agree.
because
Yeah, I
Ashley,
agree.
she doesn't get her growth until like the later games.
Right. Yeah. Especially in 3. That's one of the reasons why I always like having her around, is because she is a character that grows because of that. It's actually one of my favorite things about her character is her evolution. And I feel like that is how you properly write inclusivity or equity in gaming, as opposed to putting everything in the forefront as if you're worried that people are going to miss the point. And I feel like that is what hurts the gaming industry a lot more than actually having these qualities that may make some people uncomfortable in it.
Yeah, I think having these representations of people in games, but showing them to be a normal person, I think is gonna go a long ways for representing these people and
Right.
it not being a bad thing.
And I feel, and that's one of the things that I've always kind of viewed, is make sure that the character is a character that exists, and then whatever you want to have attached to it as a side thing rather than the main front personality. Because then they come across as like a two-dimensional character who's only there because somebody was wanting to have that one a small individual, or let me rephrase that, wanted that small group of people to identify with it just being there as opposed to actually being a part of it.
And something I would love to see go away is when I'm watching like this industry show like the Game Awards or something like that, and they have a video game announcement and there's like this black character that's shown to be the protagonist, and the comments are all like DEI or oh this game is woke and shit like that. Like what the fuck?
Yeah, I believe that that is a very dangerous mindset to get into, because at that point you're not allowing these people to expand. You don't allow people to try new things when it comes to that. It's like you preach about people trying to try new things or try different ideas, but as soon as they try, you start whining and complaining about it. It's like, pick a side at this point.
Yeah, it's like Dr. Disrespect saying that there's no games coming out, but like all he plays is shooters. He only plays shooters. He doesn't do anything else outside of shooter games. There's a lot of games that you can get into outside of shooters.
But I can also understand why some people would be a little bit gun shy, given similarly to the Concord situation, where they're worried about putting in like a lot of money into this product, and they're worried about it being essentially one giant, oh, look at this. We're going to have a whole bunch of different people in there just for the sake of it, rather than it being a fun game.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
there is a mindset behind that, and Concord is the biggest example why I could see somebody being like, I'm going to wait until I see more about it before I make my decision.
Honestly, that's just being a smart consumer in general. You don't forming an opinion before buying something is probably best rather than just jumping into it blind, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, understandable.
So, as to the question for is this actually making games bad? DEI itself is not making games bad, in my opinion. I fully believe that. What is making games bad is the fact that people don't know how to write these DEI characters, that people don't know how to write stories in games anymore. Dragon Age Veilguard, I think it's a good game. I think the things that are happening in the story itself is really cool. The thing that really takes me out of it is a fucking dialogue, and I really don't like the dialogue. I wish I wish they had better dialogue writers.
Yeah. With that game in particular, I feel like the dialogue itself is what really takes me out, because the first three games, being Dragon Age Origins 2 and Inquisition, had some of the best writing that, to me, it felt like it was rivaling like plays or novels or something like that. It felt like it was on par with them. But to me, Veilguard felt as if almost like somebody sat there, loaded up Chat GPT, and just kind of had that right before the game. Almost.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which, I don't know. Maybe that was the case. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. There's a separate argument in regards to that, but we won't get into that at this time.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about like other modern games that have done dialogue better. Like Final Fantasy Rebirth, I think is incredible. The banter between the party is great. The dialogue itself, just in general, is really good. I think even Avowed, a more recent game, one that just came out like a month ago, Avowed does dialogue really good, I think, from what I've seen.
Right. I haven't played Avowed myself, but from what I've seen, a lot of people complaining about is gameplay mechanics as opposed to anything to do with the writing. So, in regards to that, I really can't speak much on it, but I feel like there are other games out there that people are given an unfair mindset to. Like, actually, one of them is the recent release of Assassin's Creed Shadows. I feel like that game is being unfairly judged on certain things while rightly judged on others.
Well, people started complaining about it as soon as Yasuke got introduced as one of the protagonists of the game.
Right, right. And that to me comes across as wrong because they're only complaining about it because they feel like, "Oh, well this character is a black character. That's because they don't want to do any other ethnicities or something like that." It's like, "No. They're taking a character from feudal Japan's history and building a game around that mindset." That's fine with me.
Yeah, especially
What
since there was like no actual hard evidence that he was or wasn't a samurai of that time. In fact, there's actually more evidence suggesting that he might have been a samurai, but just like, we don't know for sure.
Okay, but we're also talking about Assassin's Creed here. They've always taken liberties with history. I mean,
Yeah.
just because Leonardo da Vinci did exist didn't mean that, oh, that means he must have actually created a flying contraption, a paraglider for some dude. Okay, that was clearly them taking liberties with it. So why not let them take liberties with this? Or even the previous entry, I might add, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, excuse me. Assassin's Creed Valhalla was borderline fantasy at that point with all the magical stuff that's going on in the background. And
true.
yes, people seem fine with that. So the game taking liberties with history, I don't necessarily see the issue of it unless they're doing it in an extremely negative connotation, like either taking somebody's logo from their live action role playing, or taking a shrine that was devastated to an entirely different event in their history and putting it in the game, even though it has no reason to be there and shows a lot of disingenuine towards the culture that is actually there.
Yeah. And from what I've seen, there's a Twitch streamer that I like, Pirate Software. He talks about how Assassin's Creed Shadows represents feudal Japan. And he says that they've actually done it really respectfully, that they've given a lot of historical context within the game and give him enough of a lead to want to do his own research outside the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but at the same time, I also hear that the Prime Minister of Japan isn't exactly too thrilled with the game itself for how it represents their culture. So who do I listen to at that point? The people who it's actually supposed to be based on, or people looking an outsider looking in? Who knows?
I can actually give you better context as to why the Prime Minister is upset with Assassin's Creed Shadows. It's because players are taking their characters and is basically messing up these shrines, these I can't think of the word.
Cultural. I would like to refer them as cultural hotspots.
Yeah, cultural hotspots, I guess. People are basically messing them up and disrespecting them, but apparently the game does have a mechanic where if you treat these shrines with respect, if you like pray at them and stuff, you actually get an in-game buff.
I mean, that is a good thing, but at the same time, being upset with that is a little bit unfair, given the fact that in Valhalla, I'm playing as a Viking, raiding Christian towns, raiding monasteries, and as a Christian myself, could be viewed as disrespectful, but I recognize that it's a video game. There isn't any actual, like, hidden messaging behind it. It's just what you can do in the game. So being upset over that feels a little like you're trying to stoke the fires rather than actually put any out.
Yeah, I mean, it could be argued that your example is just the consequence of it being historically accurate, but when it comes to the shrines, it's just players being bad just to be bad.
At the end of the day, it's a video game. We're playing in a sandbox world for our entertainment. Okay, if we're going to start getting judged for what we do in those games, then I need to be locked up for everything I did in GTA 5, and that I won't say any more after that.
Yeah, all of my war crimes have been in GTA Vice City.
At that point, I feel like that's just them creating issues where there is none. But back to the whole DEI in gaming, I feel as if to kind of take my viewpoints and just put it into a nice crisp sentence, the ideology behind DEI is a good thing, but given the fact that we don't know how to write it correctly without sacrificing gameplay, it is at this point acting more of a hindrance than it is helping.
I think having diverse characters is a good thing, but I think if you're making characters diverse for the sake of diversity, I think that's where you're messing things up.
I agree. I solely agree on that because of the idea of at that point you're making what fans you do have feel disingenuous to pick up your product, because at the end of the day, this is a product we're talking about here, something that people have to have a reason to go out and buy, versus catering to a smaller group of people, expecting them to pick up the slack where their customer base dropped off.
And that's no good. All right, so I think that basically summarizes everything quite neatly. You're not necessarily for DEI, but you're definitely not against it.
Once we get to the point where we can have like, if I could start having gay characters as characters and being gay is just a bonus, I'll be okay with it. Just because the fact it's a side piece is something I can enjoy as opposed to being a primary point on their personality. But that's just how I feel.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I think, do you have anything else you want to add to this conversation?
I pretty much felt like we are on the same mindset on this. And, if everybody wants to sit down and talk about it, I'd recommend doing it respectfully without trying to do any name calling, hearsay, or outright harassment.
Yeah, it can be a really hot topic to discuss about, but as long as you are doing so respectfully, as long as you are trying to respect other people's opinions, feel free to have that discussion in the comments below. Xander, is there anything you would like to plug before we go?
You won't find me. I'm not on social medias.
Yeah. And as for me, you can find me on here on YouTube, BlindedLight09, on Twitch, BlindedLight09, on Twitter at Donovan Young. And that's I also have a TikTok. You just basically anything besides Twitter is BlindedLight09. So that's gonna do it for us. Thank you for coming and watching, and thank you, Xander, for coming and having a chat with me about this.
Well, thank you for having me, and to everybody else, thank you for watching.
We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye bye.